Now, let's get into something that trips a lot of people up when they're dealing with a narcissist, your emotional response. Because here's the truth. When someone betrays you, especially someone you trusted, you're supposed to feel something. You're supposed to be angry, hurt, confused, disappointed, maybe even devastated. That's what makes you human. But see, a narcissist doesn't want you to be human. They want you to be manageable. They want your emotions to serve them, not you. And the moment your emotions get loud, the moment you react, they label it crazy, dramatic, unstable. Sound familiar? The problem isn't that you're emotional. The problem is that they're using your emotions against you. Narcissists are experts at flipping the script. You find out they lied, you get upset. And suddenly the focus is no longer on what they did, it's on how you reacted to it. That's the trap. That's the setup. They want to create a scenario where their betrayal becomes less offensive than your reaction to it. And if you're not grounded, you'll start apologizing for being human while they walk around like nothing happened. Let me say it like this. Having emotions isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That anger you feel, that sadness, that pain, it's your soul throwing up a red flag saying this isn't right. This isn't safe. This isn't love. But we live in a world where narcissists have trained us to believe that being calm in the face of disrespect is mature. That staying quiet when your boundaries are violated is strong. No, it's not. That's not strength. That's suppression. And suppressed emotions don't disappear. They build. They weigh you down. And eventually they explode in ways that hurt you, not them. You've got to stop judging yourself for having a real reaction to a fake relationship. You've got to stop shrinking your voice just to avoid being labeled. Because narcissists want you to believe that you're out of control, when in reality, you're finally trying to take control of your peace, your truth, your boundaries. I don't let them shame you for feeling something they caused. Now, that doesn't mean you react with chaos. That doesn't mean you stoop to their level. I'm not saying go flip a table or slash some tires. That's not what this is about. What I am saying is you don't have to pretend you're okay when you're not. You don't have to carry their betrayal in silence just so they can feel comfortable. Your pain is not an inconvenience. It's a response to being treated like you don't matter, and that deserves to be acknowledged, even if they never take responsibility. But here's where things shift. The real power isn't in exploding, it's in expressing. It's in choosing how to release what's inside you without letting them control the narrative. You see, narcissists want to provoke a reaction so they can say, see, you're crazy. But when you respond with calm truth, when you step back instead of lashing out, they lose their grip. You rob them of the performance. You take back your power, not by ignoring your emotions, but by owning them without letting them control you. I think about that. They want you either silent or hysterical. Those are the two lanes they can use against you. But when you move from emotion to intention, when you say, I see what you did, and I refuse to accept it, now you're dangerous. Now you're not just reacting, you're reclaiming. You're not screaming, but you're walking. You're not begging, but you're building boundaries. And that's where your real power lies. You've got to understand something else too. Narcissists will use your emotional nature as evidence that you're the problem. They'll say you're too much. But let's be honest, being too much for someone who gives too little is not a flaw. It's a mismatch. And the truth is, if they really respected you, they'd care about how you feel. They wouldn't dismiss your pain just because it's inconvenient. But narcissists aren't in relationships to connect, they're in relationships to control. And the moment your emotions no longer work for their narrative, they try to discredit you. That's why you can't argue with them. That's why explaining your feelings over and over again doesn't work. Because they're not trying to understand, they're trying to invalidate. And every time you walk back into that conversation hoping for clarity, you're handing them more of your power. Clarity doesn't come from the person who broke you. Clarity comes from within when you stop waiting for them to validate what you already know is true. And here's what you do know. Someone who loves you doesn't constantly leave you feeling confused. Someone who respects you doesn't make you feel ashamed for having feelings. Someone who is for you doesn't punish you for being honest about your hurt. That's not too much to ask. That's the bare minimum. And if that's too much for them, then they're not enough for you. See, you can't keep pouring out compassion, understanding, and forgiveness to someone who treats your emotions like weapons. You can't keep trying to fix your reactions while they keep repeating their actions. That's emotional labor you aren't meant to carry. That's weight that's keeping you from rising. So here's what you do. You stop letting them set the tone for how you respond. You stop apologizing for the very emotions they triggered. You stop reacting on their terms and start responding on yours. You breathe, you process, you feel everything without shame, and then you make a choice. Not based on how emotional you feel, but based on what protects your peace, your power, your future. You are not wrong for feeling. You are not broken because you hurt, and you are not crazy for demanding respect. That's not drama. That's discernment. That's growth. That's healing. The next time someone tells you you're overreacting, maybe ask yourself, or are they just under-responding to the damage they caused? Choose a response that leads you back to you. One of the most dangerous traps you can fall into with a narcissist is believing that their fake apologies mean something. See, narcissists don't apologize because they feel bad. They apologize because they want to buy time, reset the clock, or manipulate the narrative. And if you're not paying attention, if you're still craving closure or clinging to hope, you'll hear that apology and think maybe they're changing. But they're not. They're just recalculating what it takes to keep you exactly where they want you. Let me break this down clearly. When a narcissist says, "I'm sorry," it's often not about remorse, it's about control. And if you listen closely, it's rarely a real apology. It comes with conditions. It comes with loopholes. It sounds like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I'm sorry if you think I did something wrong." That's not an apology. That's a dismissal wrapped in a soft tone. It's their way of appearing accountable without actually accepting responsibility. And if you accept that kind of apology, you're not just forgiving them, you're enabling them. The truth is, real apologies require real reflection. They come with change, not just charm. A narcissist isn't trying to change. They're trying to restore access. When they sense you're pulling away, when they see you waking up to who they really are, that's when the apologies start. That's when they get sweet. That's when they suddenly see what they did wrong. And it's not because they care, it's because they're losing control. And nothing terrifies us more than losing control over someone who used to revolve around them. You have to understand they're not sorry for the cheating, the lies, the gaslighting. They're sorry they're being exposed. They're sorry they don't have the same grip on you anymore. The apology is just a performance designed to get a reaction, to reel you back in emotionally. And if you're in a vulnerable place, if your self-worth has already been chipped away, that performance might work. You might think, well, at least they're trying. But what you have to ask yourself is this: are they really trying to change or just trying to reset the cycle? Because narcissistic relationships don't follow a straight line. They move in cycles. Idealize, devalue, discard, repeat. And when the narcissist senses that the discard phase is backfiring when you're not chasing, not crying, not breaking, they circle back around and hit you with the apology. It's strategic, it's timed, and it's meant to test if you're still willing to trade your boundaries for the illusion of reconciliation. You ever notice how they suddenly become the perfect partner when they feel you slipping away? They say all the right things, do all the little things they used to ignore, act like they finally get it. But let's be honest, if they were capable of treating you with respect, they would have done it before you walked away, not just after. What they're doing now isn't change, it's desperation. They don't miss you, they miss the control they had over you. And this is where your power lies, in recognizing the pattern. Because when you see the game for what it is, you stop falling for it. You stop believing that a few nice words and some temporary effort equals transformation. You start requiring more than empty promises. You start requiring proof. And let me tell you, proof isn't what they say. It's what they sustain. If they really meant what they said, the change wouldn't just show up when you threatened to leave. It would show up consistently without being provoked, without being begged for. But narcissists don't want to do the work. They want shortcuts. They want to hit the reset button without having to actually repair anything. That's why they'll cry without feeling. That's why they'll apologize without changing. That's why they'll show remorse when they're losing control, but go right back to disrespect the moment you stop watching closely. That's why the apology is so dangerous, because it makes you question everything you've already survived. It makes you doubt the pain they caused. It tempts you to erase the progress you've made. So here's what you need to remember. An apology is only as powerful as the action that follows it. Words are cheap. Change is expensive. And if they're not willing to invest in the repair, then the apology is just a tool to maintain the dysfunction. And you deserve more than that. You deserve truth, not tricks. You deserve healing, not cycles. You deserve peace, not performances. Now, some of you might be thinking, but what if they really are sorry? So let me ask you this. Does their apology come with accountability or excuses? Is it followed by empathy or entitlement? Do they own what they did, or do they minimize, deflect, and redirect? Because a narcissist doesn't just apologize to fix things, they apologize to keep you from leaving. And once they've secured you again, once they know you've bought back into the story, the real version of them shows back up. And that version never had any intention of changing. That's the cycle you have to break. Not because you're bitter, but because you're finally seeing the truth. Not because you want revenge, but because you're done sacrificing your peace for their convenience. You're done mistaking manipulation for love. You're done letting a few sweet words erase a pattern of disrespect. You're done handing out forgiveness to someone who sees it as permission. So the next time they say, "I'm sorry," ask yourself this: is this healing or a setup? Is this an apology or a strategy? Is this love or leverage? And then act accordingly. because your peace depends on it. Let me tell you something that might save your life, or at the very least, your peace of mind. When you're dealing with a narcissist, there are certain things they say that aren't just annoying, manipulative, or frustrating. They're dangerous. And I don't mean just this might hurt your feelings dangerous. I mean they are red flares in the night sky. I mean your intuition is screaming and you need to listen before you're knee deep in something you can't crawl out of. People think narcissists show up with a big sign saying, hey, I'm toxic. Nah, they come smooth. They come charming. They come like they've been studying you for years and just know what you want to hear. And you know what? They probably have studied you. That's how calculated this is. They want control, not connection. So when they say certain things, it's not a fluke, it's a blueprint. They're testing your boundaries. They're probing to see how much of yourself you'll give up to keep them around. Now, let me break something down for you. If you ever hear a person, especially someone who's betrayed you, say, you made me do this, I need you to treat that like a fire alarm going off. That is not a misunderstood phrase. That's not someone struggling to communicate. That is a full-on psychological tactic. What they're really saying is, I don't take responsibility for my actions. I blame you for my behavior. And if they don't take responsibility for something like lying, cheating, or hurting you, that means they'll do it again and again and again because they don't believe it's their fault. They've placed the blame at your feet. They've handed you their guilt and told you it's your baggage now. And if you accept it, they will run with that forever. Another dangerous phrase, you're too sensitive. Listen, if someone stabs you in the back and you say, ow, and they respond with, why are you so emotional? Run. That's not an apology. That's not remorse. That's emotional gaslighting. A narcissist will test how much pain you'll tolerate and how little accountability they can get away with. And if calling you too sensitive makes you shrink, makes you second guess yourself, makes you apologize for having normal human feelings, they now know your empathy is a weapon they can use against you. Narcissists thrive in the shadows of your doubt. They whisper just enough sweetness to confuse you. They'll say things like, no one else will love you like I do, or you're lucky to have someone like me. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing that love is supposed to feel like constant confusion, walking on eggshells, or shrinking yourself to keep someone else happy. But that's not love, that's emotional prison. And the bars are made of lies and gaslighting. You know what else is a major red flag? When a narcissist flips their own wrongdoings back on you. You catch them cheating, lying, disrespecting you, and somehow they make you the villain. Suddenly it's, well, you weren't giving me enough attention. Or if you were more supportive, I wouldn't have to go elsewhere. Listen when someone cheats on you and then tries to justify it by pointing out your flaws. That's not just selfish, that's dangerous. That means they've got no moral compass. They're not just crossing boundaries, they're erasing them and handing you the pen to sign off on it. And here's the twisted part. They'll say these things calmly. They'll look you dead in the eye and speak like it's the most reasonable thing in the world. Why? Because they believe the lie they're selling, or they're just that good at acting. But you start to question yourself. You start thinking maybe you were too emotional. Maybe you should have been more patient. Maybe you drove them to cheat. That's what they want. Because the more you doubt yourself, the more power they gain. The second you believe their version of reality, you've surrendered yours. But you have to remember this, when a narcissist starts saying these things, you made me do it, you're too emotional, it's your fault, I lied, what they're really saying is, I refuse to be accountable. I am not safe. I will hurt you again. You are not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're waking up. And when you hear those phrases, don't explain, don't justify, don't argue. Just recognize what it is. It's a warning shot. It's your chance to get out before the damage digs deeper. Because the longer you stay, the more they chip away at your sense of self. They don't need to hit you to hurt you. They do it with words, with silence, with calculated chaos. And they make it so subtle you don't even realize it's happening until one day you're staring in the mirror, wondering where you went. You see, the danger isn't just in what they say, it's in what you begin to believe about yourself after hearing it long enough. You begin to think you deserve the mistreatment. You begin to think love is pain. You begin to think you're too sensitive, too needy, too emotional, too much, but you're not. You're just human. You want to be loved in a way that doesn't require you to abandon yourself. So if a narcissist starts talking like that, starts shifting the blame, dodging responsibility, making you the villain in your own story, don't ignore it. I minimize it. Don't rationalize it. Recognize it. That's your signal. That's your signal. That's your moment to say no more, because you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're just waking up to the truth, and it's time to walk in it. That's the moment everything changes. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get enough attention, the connection between narcissism and betrayal. You know, people often think cheating is just a slip up, just a moment of weakness. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, cheating isn't an accident. It's a strategy. It's a tool. It's a way to dominate, to destabilize, and to see how much they can get away with. And if you're not paying attention, you'll find yourself in a relationship where betrayal isn't just occasional, it's a pattern. You see, a narcissist doesn't cheat because they're unfulfilled. They don't lie because they're confused. They do it because they believe they can. They believe the rules don't apply to them. The truth is, they feel entitled to whatever they want: attention, affection, admiration. If you're not feeding that fast enough or strong enough, they'll go look for it somewhere else and then turn around and blame you for it. That's what makes narcissistic betrayal so dangerous. It's not just the act itself, it's the way they justify it. Because a narcissist doesn't walk in the door with their head down, apologizing. No, they walk in talking slick. They say things like, well, if you had been more supportive, I wouldn't have had to go elsewhere, or you've been distant. What did you expect? And in that moment, they're not just defending their behavior, they're reading the story so that you become the villain. And let me make something very clear: betrayal wrapped in blame is abuse. It's manipulation. And it's so smooth, you almost miss it. That's how they operate. See, they're not just trying to hurt you, they're trying to convince you that you caused it. That's why you feel crazy. That's why you second guess yourself. That's why you think, maybe if I had just done a little more, this wouldn't have happened. But the truth is, no matter how perfect you are, a narcissist will still find a reason to betray you, because it was never about you in the first place. It was always about their ego. And here's the kicker: they don't even see it as betrayal. In their mind, loyalty is something you owe them, not the other way around. They'll demand loyalty from you while disrespecting you behind your back. They'll expect you to be faithful while they entertain whoever feeds their ego that day. And the moment you speak up, they'll flip it on you. They'll accuse you of being insecure, jealous, controlling. They'll say you're overreacting when you catch them red-handed. And if you're not grounded in who you are, you'll start to believe it. Let me tell you something: there is nothing noble about staying in a situation where betrayal is normalized. There is nothing strong about tolerating disloyalty dressed up as love, because love doesn't lie to your face and then gaslight you when you call it out. Love doesn't cheat on you and then say, you pushed me into it. Love doesn't make you question your worth so they can feel better about themselves. That's not love, that's narcissistic control. And the sooner you recognize that, the sooner you can break free. A narcissist will betray you and then dare you to say something. And when you do, they'll make it seem like you're ruining the relationship. They'll cry. They'll say, I made a mistake. But look closer, there's no accountability in their apology. There's no real remorse. What they regret is getting caught. What they fear is losing control, because you calling out the betrayal threatens the false reality they've built, the one where they get to disrespect you and still be praised. Now, let me ask you something. How many times are you going to ignore the signs? How many times are you going to let someone rewrite the truth because they say they love you? How many times are you going to shrink, silence yourself, and sacrifice your self-worth just to avoid another argument? You were not put on this earth to babysit someone's ego. You're not responsible for someone else's inability to be loyal. And I know leaving isn't always easy. You've invested time. You've given your heart. You might even think you can fix it. But betrayal by a narcissist isn't a wound, it's a leak. It slowly drains your spirit. It chips away at your self-trust until you don't even recognize who you are anymore. And that's exactly how they want it, because the more confused you are, the easier you are to control. The more guilt you carry, the less likely you are to walk away. But let me remind you, betrayal is not love. Manipulation is not affection. And someone who truly loves you does not need to break you in order to feel whole. They don't need to humiliate you to feel powerful. They don't need to cheat on you to feel alive. That's not about love. That's about their emptiness. And you can't pour enough into someone who's committed to staying empty. So when a narcissist cheats, when they lie, when they flip the script and make you feel like the problem, don't let that slide. Don't write that off as a one-time thing if the pattern keeps repeating, because that pattern is telling you something. You're not safe in that space, not emotionally, not mentally, not spiritually. And you can't build anything real with someone who builds their self-worth on deception. Stop normalizing betrayal. Stop calling it love. Stop making excuses for people who wouldn't even cross the street for you if it didn't serve them. When someone shows you who they are, believe it the first time, not the fifth, not the 10th, the first. Because betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your connection to yourself. It makes you question your intuition, your judgment, your value. And nobody is worth that kind of damage. You don't need to stay and prove you're good enough. You don't need to fight for someone who betrayed you and blamed you for it. You need to choose you every single time. Let me tell you something that people don't always understand until it's too late. Narcissists don't just want to win, they want to own the narrative. See, when a narcissist hurts you, it's not enough that they betrayed you, manipulated you, lied to you, or disrespected you. No, what really fuels them is making sure you look like the problem in the end. They don't just walk away quietly. They rewrite the story. They twist the truth. And they spread it to anyone who will listen. Because in their world, accountability doesn't exist but control. Oh, they need that like oxygen. What you have to realize is that a narcissist's biggest fear is losing you. It's losing their version of the truth. They can't afford for people to see what they really did. They can't stand the thought of someone else controlling the narrative. So when things fall apart, they don't reflect their project. They start planting seeds, subtle ones. She was always too emotional. He was insecure. They just couldn't handle my success. And before you know it, people who don't even know the full story start questioning you instead of them. Now, this is where it gets dangerous, because when someone you once loved, someone who knows your fears, your triggers, your soft spots, starts using those very things to undermine you in the eyes of others, that's not just manipulation. That's warfare. They don't want peace after the breakup. They want domination. They want the last word. They want to silence you while convincing everyone else that they're the victim. And if you're not careful, you'll start defending yourself against lies you never even saw coming. But let me warn you, fighting back on their level is a trap. You don't win by shouting louder. You don't win by playing their game, because narcissists thrive in chaos. They love drama. They feed on confusion. If they can get you emotional, reactive, spiraling, they win. Not because they're right, but because now you look like everything they said you were. See, look how unstable they are. Look how bitter. Look how obsessed. Meanwhile, they sit back, calm and collected, telling their version of the story to anyone who will listen. So what do? You rise, you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop pouring energy into clearing your name in spaces where your name was never honored to begin with. The truth doesn't need a PR campaign. It just needs time. And time has a way of revealing what manipulation tried to hide. You've got to protect your peace like your life depends on it, because in some ways it does. Emotional peace, mental stability, spiritual grounding, those are non-negotiables when you're healing from narcissistic abuse. And the moment you try to chase closure from someone who broke you and blamed you for bleeding, you lose. You lose energy, you lose clarity, and most of all, you lose yourself. Let them talk. Let them spin whatever story they need to in order to feel like the hero. That's not your battle. Your battle is staying centered in your truth. Your battle is continuing to heal, grow, elevate quietly, because one day the same people who believe their lies will see the truth. And you won't even need to say, "I told you so." Your peace will speak louder than their drama ever could. Now, I get it. There's a part of you that wants justice. A part of you that wants everyone to know what they really did. You want the mask to fall off. You want them exposed. But let me remind you, karma doesn't miss. And you don't have to be the one to deliver it. Because the same tactics they used on you, they'll use on the next person. And eventually, that pattern will catch up to them. You don't need to chase revenge. You just need to not be there when it hits. Because here's the truth. If you waste your energy trying to clear your name in every room they've poisoned, you'll miss the rooms that were built for your healing. You'll miss the opportunities that lead to your growth. You'll miss the people who actually see you, the ones who don't need to be convinced of your worth, because they already recognize it. So instead of reacting, focus on rebuilding. Focus on becoming so aligned with your peace that their chaos can't touch you. Focus on becoming the version of you that doesn't need to scream the truth because you live it. That's where your power is. That's how you win, not by proving them wrong, but by proving yourself right. By showing yourself that you don't need their validation, their approval, or their permission to move on. And let me say this too, protect your boundaries like your future depends on it. Don't let them back in just because they circle around with more fake apologies or guilt trips. Remember, narcissists don't change, they adjust. They tweak their behavior just enough to get another shot at control. And if you're still hoping to set the record straight, they'll use that hope to drag you right back into the cycle. Let them have their version of the story. Let them be the hero in their own fiction. Because deep down, they know the truth. They know what they did. And even if they never admit it out loud, that guilt, yes, even narcissists feel it. Though they bury it deep, it eats away at them when the spotlight fades. You don't need to hold on to that weight anymore. That's their burden, not yours. At the end of the day, it's not your job to control how others see you. It's your job to stay rooted in who you are. To live in a way that makes the lies irrelevant, to walk in a truth so strong, so steady, that it dismantles every false narrative simply by existing. Your silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And your peace isn't passivity, it's power. So let's talk about one of the most dangerous lies narcissists will try to sell you. The idea that you're lucky to have them. That without them, you're nothing. That no one else will love you, care for you, understand you, or put up with you the way they do. That's how deep the manipulation runs. And let me tell you, if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, you've heard some version of that lie. Sometimes it's said directly. Other times it's whispered in the way they treat you, the way they act like your value only exists because they chose you. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe them, because narcissists don't just attack your confidence, they dismantle it. Piece by piece, they chip away at how you see yourself. It starts with small jabs, subtle criticisms disguised as just being honest. Then it builds comments about how you talk, how you dress, how you think. They plant seeds of doubt. They make you question your worth, your intelligence, your beauty, your strength. And the more you shrink, the more they shine. That's how they keep control. That's how they create dependency. And they want you to believe that they're the best you'll ever have, so that when they treat you like an option, you'll still treat them like a prize. They want you to feel so broken without them that you'll tolerate anything with them. And once they've got you believing that narrative, they can cheat, lie, manipulate, gaslight, because now you're convinced that walking away means being alone, and being alone means being worthless. But let me speak truth into you right now. You were whole before they found you, and you'll still be whole after they leave. Your worth didn't begin when they chose you, and it won't end if they reject you. Narcissists love to pretend they built you, but they didn't. They just walked into the life you already had and tried to convince you it was theirs. And that illusion only works when you forget who you were before the manipulation. You see, they don't fall in love with you because you're weak. They're drawn to your strength. They're attracted to your light. But the moment they realize they can't control that light, they start trying to dim it. Because the truth is, they're intimidated by the very power they first admired. They resent your confidence, your independence, your intuition. So they wage war on those things. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, a sarcastic comment here, an emotional withdrawal there. And before you know it, you start doubting what you once knew deeply about yourself. And that's not an accident. That's the plan. Narcissists don't just want attention. They want submission. They want emotional leverage. They want to be the voice in your head that questions you long after they're gone. That's why the healing journey after narcissistic abuse is so hard, because it's not just about recovering from what they did. It's about unlearning what they taught you to believe about yourself. So how do you undo that damage? You start by remembering. You remember who you were before you needed their approval. You remember the version of yourself that didn't tolerate being disrespected. You remember your dreams, your voice, your joy, the ones you set aside to make them comfortable. And then you reclaim them one by one, day by day, thought by thought. You rebuild your identity on truth, not on the lies they fed you. Because here's what they don't want you to know. You are not hard to love. You were just loving someone who wanted power more than partnership. You are not too much. You were just with someone who could never handle your depth. You're not broken. You're not disposable. And you are absolutely not unworthy. You just got caught in a relationship where the goal wasn't to grow, it was to dominate. And the fact that you're even here, listening, healing, reflecting, that's power. That's growth. That's evidence that they didn't break you. They just revealed the parts of you that still need your own love. Because self-love is the antidote to narcissistic control. When you know who you are, you don't fall for counterfeit connection. When you love yourself fully, you stop trying to earn love from people who use it as bait. And yes, there will be moments when you miss them, moments when you remember the highs, the passion, the good times. But understand, narcissists use highs as a hook. It's not real connection. It's a tactic. That idealized version of them you fell for, that was a mask, a performance, a strategy. And holding on to that fantasy will only keep you stuck in the cycle. You don't miss them, you miss the version of them they pretended to be. So stop waiting for them to validate your worth. Stop giving them the power to define your value, because deep down, you know who you are. You know what you bring. You know how deeply you love, how loyal you are, how rare your soul is. And anyone who can't recognize that isn't your loss, they're just not ready for your presence. You don't have to stay small to keep someone around. You don't have to dim your light so they can shine. You don't have to settle for being tolerated when you were born to be celebrated. Let them go. Let the version of yourself that needed their approval go. Let the fear that said you'll never find better go. Because when you finally see your worth clearly, you'll never again make space for someone who couldn't. You were never the weak one. You were just the one who cared too much, gave too much, stayed too long. But now, you know, and now that you don't go back, you go forward, not because you're heartless, but because you've learned to protect your heart. Not because you're bitter, but because you're better, stronger, wiser. And the greatest revenge you'll ever have is building a life so full, so peaceful, so powerful that they no longer get to be the main character in your story.